All right, let's jump into it. It's 10 to 10 on the 19th of February, so Thursday morning. And look, I'll start off as I have a fair bit recently with gold. And look, gold was an interesting sort of one through yesterday. Whoops, put this one back here. Through yesterday, so I was looking for that sort of one drive down earlier. I would have liked to have sort of got down just to take out these lows before this push up over here. We did get a push down early, but as you can see, pretty sort of sharp reversal. And this sort of like move through Asia really just was just a straight grind, as you can see, sort of a little bit of a, this was the open, so 10 o'clock candle, pushed down, and they turned around and just went up, 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 up. We got a little bit of a good cooling off and that sort of through Europe. And then, of course, I didn't actually see this part coming here. This was Iran back in the headlines again. So it's been a very sort of choppy sort of thing in regards, and very sort of twitchy, knee-jerky kind of sort of stuff. Like, as I said, look, I was looking for a relief rally through yesterday. Would have liked to have got down lower first. So I actually missed this move coming up through here, though it did respect the chart perfectly. I put a post up on X at the time because this is where the sellers had been previously. This is where I expected them to come in, and they came in with it all. Their little retest came back, obviously, to this other sort of majors, more major, I don't know. I wouldn't really call it a major zone, but anyway, this other zone that we had sort of marked up through here, and then it really just sort of took off up through here. And the reason that I sort of say that it's like, a bit knee-jerky and back in the news again is because this big drop down here was where everything was okay. And, there was a little bit of a headline through this period here. This is going back Tuesday now, where they were like, 48 fighter jets are on their way to Iran. Market didn't really react. And then everything was okay. And market dumped. And then, of course, yesterday, uh, the the Iran headlines again that, Trump's sort of okaying them for war. And it's like, you see these posts on X of like, sort of like, all the, like a map with all these like little outlines of planes and American flags, and see, they're mobilizing, they're coming over here. I mean, look, that's not my forte. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't, whatever. But the point is that sort of like, what we try to do is obviously look at the charts and look at the flows and sort of ascertain, is this a knee-jerk reaction or is it real? Because again, through here we had headlines that 48 fighter jets were going. Market didn't react. Here we had the headline that everything's okay. Iran and US are sort of working things out. Market dumps. Now, oh, to wait, no, they're actually going for one of the largest military operations ever. And it goes up over here again. And it's just like, what I mean. This isn't the style in which I prefer to kind of sort of trade. I prefer these levels. I prefer structure and flow. But anyway, so they were the headlines there coming out. And the reason that I sort of question this, because you kind of sort of could be like, well, I mean, that's what it is. That's what people are doing. And, conversations and situations go back and forth and markets moving this way, moving that way, new headlines come out and moves this way, yada, yada. But what I find interesting with these kind of things is that if this was the full mover, if it was like, okay, yes, we're going to war, right? Well, I would have thought at the same time you'd get equity markets sell off. I mean, this is going off what we've sort of seen previously in the past. You'd see equity markets sort of selling off. They didn't. They actually, this is that same period here. Hold on, actually, let's put them side by side. You can have a look at what was happening at the time. Well, first of all, we can say this is with the Aussie dollar. Where was this? This period here. So you can see the lines match up, the dotted line sort of the time with it all here. Aussie did actually sort of succumb to the downside here, but this is more of a US dollar strength move. This little part here, as you can see, this big candle that went from 49.50 up over 5,000 again. Aussie was also moving up at that same time. Aussie sort of went from 50 back up to 78, so another 30-point push up. And the point is sort of like, I mean, if it's a true sort of like, okay, yes, we're going to war and all these kind of things, risk associated stuff like Aussie would be hammered. And yes, you can say Aussie did sort of succumb to the downside. It was obviously down through, down through the day. But why would this big push up through here if war is about to happen and that is the true driver? Why would Aussie be bought up through that period? This is just a question. I mean, there's no sort of direct answer to it all. But again, if you look at this around the same time here, this big candle here, this is the Dow Jones. You know what I mean? Yes, it's coming down, and then hold on, wait, headlines, we're going to war, biggest military operation ever, and so equity markets go to new highs, and again, they succumb to the downside. But my feeling with that, again, is more for the dollar, because the dollar actually is on a charge and is on a breakout. And this is my sort of point that I'm sort of just questioning whether this move's going to stick. Are we sort of just going, okay, yep, cool, let's keep buying this thing up and let's keep going up? I question it a little bit. Look, what I would like to do, if we get back to the actual charts with it all, is obviously sort of see if this move is going to sort of hold. Because remember, I mean, like, it's all very well that we have got this big move here, but if you look at the analysis yesterday and the description of it all, we were expecting a relief rally anyway. It just so happens that the headlines come here and sort of like sort of support that sort of move coming up through there. But if, as it is at the moment, these whatever, just to sort of emphasize the sort of point, purple zone, whatever. As it is at this moment, you're still getting lower highs. So it is coming down like this. Has broken through what would maybe be this channel. This was a bit of a tentative line down over here. Obviously didn't sort of ring true in that. So look, it's definitely sort of on the charge. And you can't sort of deny that, okay, yes, it did sort of spring right back, because I think through yesterday, where did we come from? Sort of like, 48, 60 at the low. So it's up 140 bucks through the day. The question now is this it? Is this the sort of thing? Is it going to are we on our charge back up towards 5100? And of course, 5100 is major breakouts. This pullback here, is that the whole sort of move? And these are the kind of things that I'm sort of looking at the moment, is to sort of think, okay, because I think this came to about the 38%. We have a look here. This one. Yeah, so as you can see, that pullback from the lows down here through to that sort of failed breakout attempt above 5100, 38% retracement, move through to the top side here. So if this move does carry on, and this is just, again, considering both sides of it all, if this move does sort of carry on, well, you've got a charge up here, you've got a 38% retracement. That's a good sort of idea that the buyers are pretty hungry and to sort of take through here. Structurally though, you need to go through 5100. But should that happen, well, there's bounce 38%, attack those highs, and again, if you just sort of look, it's the same thing that's sort of going every time. That's one leg, find resistance, support, you attack these highs here, and that's where it's going to give you either range like this, or you're going to get your sort of breakthrough, and it goes up like this, and then you sort of redo that sort of flow there. So, what I mean, there is an argument, should this thing carry on, that this could be it, and we could be getting that bigger breakout to the top side. Again, it's just, I question these things as to sort of whether that, Iran headline is truly the thing that's going to be getting a full turnaround in the metals. Look, there's an argument for it. As I said, it's on the 38% there. It did sort of kick back quite strongly yesterday, but I think sort of another day of gains will really be something that cements it, that this is the go. And obviously taking out these most sort of previous highs. So above 50.50, I think you've got something really going on. And I would say that sort of like, potentially we could be seeing something sort of like, at least a challenge of 5100 and then potential sort of breakouts there. All right, so just had sort of gold open up here now as well, and as you can see, just opened up and sort of just a little bit of a quick sort of drop down here. Look, yesterday, again, start of the day was pretty quiet, sort of as we had to go through. And yes, it kind of drifted through Asia. Again, of course, we got sort of China holiday at the moment. So, look, there's two arguments for those sort of things. One, there's no one to drive it, so there's no volume. So you can just get sort of dead, sort of sideways sort of stuff. Or you get a move and there's no real opposing force to sort of move these things. But we sort of dragged this up. I actually had this on a different one. No, it didn't quite line up here. So a couple of these different feeds will sort of come up with different lows with it all. Yeah, so yeah, not quite there yet with it all. So yeah, look, I think sort of a downside, it obviously sort of like, it's cooled off into the close. It's dropped onto the open. If this thing sort of flips and moves up over here, takes out the highs above 50.20 or 50.15 or so, this kind of area, you're back to really challenging these highs over here. And again, as I said, these are kind of your sort of, you can see with your structure, these are your lower highs where we've then taken out a new low each time. So, you know what I mean? This move could still sort of come up here, challenge this 50-50 area, and then sort of fail back down over here. But we'll see how we go with that. It's a little bit oversold. I mean, let's get off the 15 minute. The 1 hour, look, it seems to be sort of a little bit of just an early shake, perhaps, maybe just a continuation of that move down there. I'm not completely sold on this sort of falling resistance here, but I mean, technically you're kind of above the top side over here, but I wouldn't be hanging. I'd be working more with the horizontals here, as they seem to be sort of respecting a little bit better. As you can see, sellers, around this sort of 50.13 kind of really came in here at the same level here as well. So top side, take out overnight highs, and then we're sort of looking back at 50-50. 50-50 is kind of like you kind of, okay, wow, yeah, this move's a little bit more legit. Whereas sort of like if we do sort of come back down here, see what happens with the buyers, if we do get a push back down here, see what happens with the buyers down to this level, because obviously that played its part as resistance. We could see it was a support back over here as well. So any sort of move back down into, say, 49.40, should we get this? I mean, look, it could just sort of run off from here. But should we get a sort of pull back down here, and if we see buyers and sort of support come in at this level, and then we sort of put our attention back towards that 50-20 level, that could probably be a bit more of a sustained move to the top side. It does seem very sort of shallow pullbacks here. And of course, we just got open for the first few minutes here. So, should this thing sort of go off, okay, well, we've got our levels above. But I think for a more sustained move, if things were to sort of respect the levels a little bit better, I move down to sort of maybe sort of 49.40, see the buyers, or at least sort of like, potentially people that are trying to short this that didn't sort of jump out off those headlines. If they close their positions out, and we start to see a support come back in here, focus goes back on that sort of 5,000 level, 5,000, 5,010, for then potential breakthrough. And that would probably be, I would say, a bit more of a sustained move to the top side there. All right, flip along, we got silver. And silver, actually, same sort of thing here. Was looking for that early push down to take out the lows before we took off, and just missed that boat. And it just sort of like really took off and went. Very similar to sort of gold. It probably held a little bit better actually than gold, because of course, they both had that little just straight grind up through Asia, whereas silver just really sat sideways, as you can see here, where gold sort of had a little bit of a sort of pullback before going again. But more or less, as you can see, up, sold off a little bit into the end of the session, and opening up with a little bit of up and down here at the moment. So I've got it on another feed as well. It doesn't really seem to be moving a great deal on this one, but on the other feed's moving a bit. Anyway, so point being, we had this little flag set up through here, sort of measure move. It's close, but not quite up there into that 49. Yesterday, I was saying that sort of like from before we had this little flag set up, that above, where was it? I think above 45, 45.50, sorry, 45, 74, 75.50, above this little horizontal here, 77.50 was on the cards, which is this level just up over here, which obviously went through, took out kind of thing, and it's kind of dancing around here a little bit at the moment. Look, it's sort of coming back in. We do have this sort of falling resistance up above us here with a bit of a confluence of this horizontal as well. So I just sort of question a little bit at this point these moves as to sort of how fast and high they're going to go. We're going to have to actually see some sort of escalation with Iran in my opinion, because these are the, I mean, look, we were looking for a relief rally anyway. We got that. And then as it sort of came up and potentially would have sort of done a nice little structural rollover retest, move on, it's just exploded up here again. And that's obviously sort of off those headlines kind of thing. So, yeah, we've seen it move there. Dollar on the bid into the end, and obviously that sort of weighed on silver here a little bit. And now we're sort of starting to see, is this level going to hold back here? Because this is where, the target was, I said yesterday, that sort of 75.70 went through, back underneath. Are the sellers going to hold it here again? So if we do see a failure to sort of move through, if you look at this on a sort of lower structure, you got your move up, resistance, back support. We're in this little third leg here now. So if you think this is really going a lot higher, not only do you want to take out these highs, you got to deal with these highs over here, plus this falling resistance coming through here. So you really need to see a powerful move with silver here up above, say, 79, 79.50 to sort of say that this move is really sort of going on. And look, it could definitely do this. I mean, it's quite a bounce back over here. But again, these sort of things, here are your highs. We're back challenging this bounce high over here, but certainly it's far off from doing anything that's sort of like, if you take this thing into context, zoom out there, you can see that it's really just in a bounce position at the moment. You got to take out these highs, the falling resistance. Like there's a lot of things up above it, for it to sort of break through to sort of say, hey, hold on, wait, silver's really back in the mode here at the moment. So look, it's definitely on the charge. It's definitely looking like it wants to at least sort of challenge overnight highs. I would say though, realistically, even sort of getting, like, as you can see, only just kissed into this zone and then already sort of sold back here a little bit more. So above 49, call 49, 49, sorry, 49, 79, 50, then I reckon you could be sort of seeing something a little bit sort of more substantial with silver. All right, so moving on and onto the dollar, because this is really the one that's going to be telling us what's what. So yesterday, sort of basically just to sort of unpack where we're kind of been with this. Nobody likes a diamond, but this is the only time I've seen a diamond work. Diamond, break, backtest, top side of the falling resistance, ascending triangle, break, backtest on the horizontal, up, move through these levels here. This is the previous supports on that last leg up through there. And then sort of obviously sold back down, retested this level. This is where we're at yesterday. And I was saying that, look, structurally, and this is the whole point of these sort of things, structurally, you got resistance, you back find support. Where does support come in? Well, it comes in at previous resistance. And then this is the important leg. And this is why I not that I sort of question these metals, because like these things can move together, but in a perfect world for metals to be rocketing, you need the dollar to be getting sold off. And the dollar here obviously kicked right back into life, and that had a little bit of sort of trouble sort of through the earlier parts of the session, but very much, as you can see, charged up through here and then took out things, and now we're back very close to testing a very important level for the dollar. Because if we put this on a higher time frame, like this is on the daily here, all of a sudden that little internal structure that we were just looking at just then forms the bigger part of this, which is a higher low, which is confirmed by a break north of this consolidation back here. So now the focus is really on these highs over here, above 98, this zone just here. You break above here, and we've got a bit of a turnaround in the dollar. And we had some headlines the other day that sort of like, dollar short positions were at the highest they'd been in 14 years or something like this. And the idea sort of being that obviously if everybody's looking in one direction, well, you can rip it to the other side. Look, there's some contrarian kind of views with these sort of things, and people sort of think, okay, yes, this could be the case, it may not be the case, and we'll see. What we are seeing, though, is this sort of structure here at the moment, whereas we've got a potential fake breakout down here. We've got a bounce back to life, a retest of this zone on the 61%, The buyers have held, so the buyers have moved from down here, they've moved up their bid, they're obviously applying pressure here at the moment. I would say at a minimum you've got a test of 98, but this has got room to move through here. It's not even overbought yet. Closed near its highs, but not on its highs, because as I've said a couple of times to that, I do believe candles that close sometimes, I mean, it doesn't sort of ring true with these ones through here, but closing on your highs doesn't always guarantee sort of continuation. I suppose actually, if we look at this part here, this close on highs carried through here, these close on the highs and reversed. So, you know, I don't think it's as clear cut as it is with regarded with stocks anyway. But point being is structurally we've got a higher low. Emphasis now is on 98. If you break through 98, well, you've got a bunch of people trapped down here. You've got highest short dollar positions in 14 years. You've got a structural turnaround with a higher low. Realistically, yeah, you've got some other resistances just up above you here as well. But still, I think the bigger picture of this thing is this fake out down here, the higher low, and this will then sort of be putting a higher high, and that's the turnaround. This is your warning that things are turning around, the higher low, the change of the structure, and then a higher high is the confirmation. So above 98, you know, doesn't mean necessarily, hey, you know, we're going back up over here, another thing, but certainly it's probably more constructive than it's looked for quite some time. And I think that's going to catch a lot of people off guard. Despite as much as sort of people sort of know that sort of contrarian view of sort of like, oh, everybody's short, so we're going to squeeze it. Well, you either get on board or you don't. And this is why I question the metals full recovery at the moment. These things can run together at the same time, yes. But for the metals to really rip, you need to have, at minimum, this kind of stuff where the market's just selling the dollar, smashing the dollar. I mean, this is where we had silver run 160% or whatever the hell it did through last year. You know, see, there's a start of January, there's a Jan 25, dollar smashed down, and then at best, it's just been going sideways for a while. So, like, again, you can see that it's not necessarily, okay, we're guaranteed to come back up here. You need to break through 100. But as a little internal structure down here, certainly a higher low, puts that back as a legitimate target at sort of 99.50. Should we break through 98? Yeah, you've got the underside of this support here. You've got this falling resistance through here. So it's not going to be a straight cut move. It's not like you're going to pass here and go straight up. You're going to have little parts where it does push back in that. But till this thing sort of fails and then rolls back down over here, I think sort of metals are going to be somewhat capped. Not to sort of say that they can't. I mean, silver could still run 10 or 15 bucks up, but I don't think you're going back above 100 till you get sort of dollar back down underneath 96.50. So look, at the moment it does look fairly constructive. I mean, first target I would say is up to test 98. See what happens at 98. You'd expect some sort of pushback from 98, but again, the second effort is what you're kind of looking for. So that's your larger structure. Your lower structure, if we get down onto lower time frames, is obviously this kind of move here. So what you'd expect or what you'd be kind of looking for is a move here to the highs, some sort of pushback, and again, the buyers to then step up from their bid down here up to these sort of levels and then drive it through 98. And I think once above 98, then yeah, we might sort of see metals start to cool off there a little bit. But of course, look, these headlines, anything that sort of pops up with the headlines, that can really sort of alter whatever we sort of see with it all. So, there's a lot going on at the moment, and the structure. This is what we're working on, the sort of structure. But of course, you got to be abreast of the headlines and these kind of things happening, because I mean, as you can see yesterday, a headline can sort of really just disregard flows and charts and all this kind of thing because you're dealing with emotion there. Anyway, point being is that dollar looks like it's on the charge. I would say probably a test up, 97.80 to 98, and then expect a little bit of a sellback, pushback from there, and then watch for the buyers to sort of push up their bid from down here to sort of find a little support up around these sort of say 97.60 areas, and then sort of a second effort to sort of drive through 98. All right, so moving on, let's have a look at Aussie. So Aussie, as we are seeing, sort of obviously sort of kind of drifting back. Which chart were we using? This was on the one, was it? This is the one we were kind of looking at yesterday. So let's get onto the lower time frame. So we started off here yesterday. We kind of looking to sort of see if the market was going to sort of come back, and this isn't a major zone through here. I know there's arrows absolutely everywhere here, but this is a little midway, which you can see, it has been support, support, support. They've tried to hold it a few times and that. They did try to hold it yesterday to get this push back here. Though, as you can see, retest was just of that little opening zone through here. And this is kind of what I'm sort of talking about, sort of with the metals as well at the moment. I mean, Aussie the day before, big, strong push up into close, closed right near the highs, consolidated the highs, and then obviously we saw a drift back down here. Now, of course, nothing's ever sort of one to one with stuff. It just goes to show that sort of even though things can be very incredibly bullish, taking out previous highs and all this kind of sort of stuff, close near the highs, consolidate up over here, it can still fail. And again, I don't want to sort of be the sort of person that's constantly looking for these things to be sort of fake. I mean, if the flows are showing it, hence why we have those sort of like, if it takes out the previous night's highs and that legitimizes the moves a little bit more, we can sort of say, okay, yes, the move's a little bit more legitimate. But the whole point of what we're trying to do is to ascertain are these moves legit? Because these markets at the moment, apart from the fact if you look at this is just chop city, up and down, up and down, up and down, up and down. Then you throw headlines into the mix. You don't, I mean, and again, I know I sort of sound like this sort of tinfoil hat sort of person, but over the last 48 hours, we've had the 48 jets flying across. We had everything's okay. We've had it back to now it's the with the worst, biggest military operation that we've probably ever seen. And you just sort of think like there is given that pattern there's a possibility that hey things work out. And it turns out that sort of like it was all a farce. Anyway, whatever. We'll see how we go. As I said, the structure and the flow is what we're interested in. So anyway, we had sort of Aussie, obviously sort of that little bit of a rally as I touched on earlier, and then obviously broke to the downside over here. Now this is more, as I said, probably dollar related than anything else because RBA, we know what they're doing. We know that they're sort of they're the most they're the most hawkish central bank in the G10. They've realistically probably going to look at more hikes to come. That's great. And that's what got it moving through this period over here. But that's already baked into the price. We had the hike, that's out of the way. The reason that it didn't just go, okay, we've hiked out of the way and we'll come back down over here is most likely because we are still hawkish. The RBA is still hawkish and probably sort of most likely still going to see uh, more hikes to come before they're done with this sort of cycle. And then when you sort of balance that against, in this case, obviously, the Fed, who are more in a sort of hold cut part of their cycle, that's obviously sort of what's still going to keep Aussie elevated. However, once the dollar gets on the bid, it doesn't matter how sort of like hawkish Bullock comes out of the press conferences. As you can see, all the hawkishness in the world and the idea that it's still going to hike, well, Aussie is obviously on its lows of this sort of pullback through here. So it found support sort of where it was just a day ago. I wouldn't be surprised if this move sort of continues through down here. Again, we got a little midway zone coming through around sort of 70, 70, 10 kind of area. Should that break, I wouldn't mind having a little bit of a stab down here potentially for some bounce plays around 69.90. This could hold through here and we could sort of start to firm up a little bit of a range. But I think the fact that we were here, we got this incredible sort of pushback up, and the market could have just very easily, as I said, closed, consolidated near the highs, right underneath resistance. If they wanted to carry that on, that was the time for them to do it. However, they've really just ripped it right back down to the lows here again. And as you can see now, it's kind of like drifting up a little bit, but I wouldn't be surprised if this then sort of takes out. So if we go through, 70.30, then I reckon we're probably looking at sort of between 70 and 70.10 to see what happens. But realistically, you could expect probably a little bit of an overshoot into the 90s, around that sort of 61%. 61% move of sort of retracement of this sort of larger move up over here to then sort of see if we can get a bit of a sort of bounce play through here. But at this point, I'm kind of not really interested in buying the Aussie. I still have, like, I got rid of a few shorts, but I would like to sort of get down over around 70, around this sort of 70.10 area. I'd like to sort of probably close the shorts and then sort of look if we can flip and then sort of catch a bit of a bounce, because the 90s do tend to sort of be a fairly decent reversal level. Whether that sort of bounce holds and goes back up here, well, yeah, that's a different story. Most likely it won't, but you should be able to sort of drag 20, 30 points generally of a bounce out of the 90s. So we'll see how we go, but for me, I think this has probably still got a little bit of downside to come. All right, and finally, kind of moving on with Aussie yen. Now, this one obviously sort of completely different to what we're sort of seeing with Aussie USD in that sort of respect. And that did sort of sell off a little bit, sort of tracking a little bit more like the metals did, as we saw that sort of strong push up yesterday, and then sort of obviously sort of sell off into close, and now it's kind of bouncing. It's actually very, very similar to sort of what we're seeing with the silver chart. But we can see that certainly it kicked back to life here yesterday. So yesterday we were sort of looking for like a little bit of a pushback, and this is what I'm saying. When you're looking for these structure, you've got the buyers down here. You wanted to see them sort of actively push up their bid, which they had, and then sort of obviously take out the highs, and that opens the door to structure moving up a little bit higher. Where it's at right now, I kind of thought sort of maybe through yesterday we would have had a bit of this wedge here, but obviously, as I said, the headlines kind of disregard a lot of these things. You got the breakout, and now it's back into the top side here. I think sort of like, as long as it can stay above sort of 108.80, there's potential for this thing to continue drifting a little bit higher. Does this come up with anything? Not really. Leave that there for it all. Let's just make this a little bit smaller. Mainly just to show that it kind of was sort of setting up for a wedge fake, well, sort of like disregarded, breakout back inside it. And this is what I'm sort of saying. The reason I keep that there is because sort of just to give you an idea that these things are, obviously disregarding some of the technicals with it all here. Anyway, so I think sort of back below sort of 108.80, you're kind of coming back to 108.60. There is kind of where you want to see the buyers hold it. As you can see, they're pushing it up bit by bit by bit, and this is how that would sort of look like this. So, this is why you need to hold that 108.80 area, because you've got the buyers have stepped back in here, second attempt back in here, plus you've got this sort of rising support coming through here. If you break this zone, you're coming back down here to test these guys down over here at 108.60. But realistically, you've kind of done a bit of a sort of fake out, break, and then fake breakout sort of leads to sort of probably a bit more of a breakdown to these bottom sides over here. So look, I mean, at the moment, certainly does look like it wants to move a bit higher. This is on the 1 hour. It's actually sort of overbought, moving towards oversold. So it's being sold off here at the moment, even though it's sort of holding this little sort of pullback zone through here. But I think sort of certainly above 109.20, you're looking up at sort of 109.50 to sort of see test these sort of sellers up over this zone over here. But with the fact that we had this little wedge sort of forming before this headline sort of came out and pushed it right through the highs, should this thing sort of fail and come back down here, I think, realistically, that's the kind of level that you're really looking for underneath 108.60. And if you get down underneath 108.60, then that's obviously failed breakout kind of thing. And you're probably sort of coming realistically, I wouldn't be surprised if that dribbles all the way back down to 108 down over here, because, once you sort of show your hand with these kind of setups and that, and you go, okay, here's the breakout. Doesn't matter when it is, but if you get a breakout, however that comes, you need to stick that breakout. So they need to sort of really, in this structure now, pop through this high and show that this move is genuine and it is continuing up to the top side here. If we see this attempted breakout and then the sellers just come straight back in and slap it down straight away, most likely that's them showing their hand and then sellers go, okay, fine, that's good for us, and we'll see a bit of a cascading move to the bottom side here. But I think sort of 108, yeah, 108.80, 108.60 is probably the more major one here, and then above 109.20 to sort of look up to those sort of 109.50 levels. All right, I think that's about it for me. Actually, just while we do have this here, we do have Aussie data coming out this morning as well. We got the job numbers, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so 11:30. So look, expectation here is, what I mean, sort of unemployment sort of pushing up a little bit, and also job numbers coming down. Should these numbers sort of come out like this, it's not necessarily the clincher with it all, because as I say, like, I mean, you take wherever it's gone, job numbers from Aussie, well, their expectations with a grain of salt, because every single month they're in the 20s. I don't think they ever sort of predict anything outside the 20s, even though they're drastically wrong every single time. It's like an ongoing joke. Anyway, the point is that should we see a weakening of job numbers plus an unemployment rate move up? 4.2 is still not too bad. We had a bit of an overshoot last month with that sort of 4.1 print, but should we see it come in hotter, say even if this went to 4.3, or these do come in lower. So say they just come in as expected here, technically that's more in a weaker Aussie dollar position, because obviously sort of like unemployment rates going up, well, they know that they can't necessarily, not that they can't do it, it's just it removes the drive or the sort of legitimize of the higher rates and more hikes, because it means that the rates at the level they're at right now are causing unemployment. If you push it even higher, well, employers are going to have less money, and less money, they have less employment. So this is just going to exacerbate this problem. And the same sort of thing for how many people you are employing. Well, obviously, sort of like if these numbers drop off, and then sort of like, it comes in quite bad. Well, what's going to happen if you just make it more difficult for those businesses, i.e. have the rates hiked or at least higher for longer? If these numbers do come in like this, it's not going to be great for the Aussie. And obviously, any sort of lower side here or any higher side on the unemployment rate is going to exacerbate that problem. Flip side, obviously, is that we get another strong print and we get sort of unemployment rate low. Should that happen? Well, it's basically saying, hey, look, we've just hiked and doesn't really matter. Look at this, we're still employing a whole heap of people. Unemployment's not ticking up. Things are all still dandy. You know what? Maybe we could hike a little bit more because it's not having the effect so far. So that's just a little unpack of that Aussie data sort of coming up there. Apart from that, we've got unemployment claims in the US back into the 220s. It seems to be about the sort of standard at the moment. And that's about it in terms of data coming out for tonight. We've got a couple of sort of Fed speakers middle of the night. No, nothing sort of super exciting. All right, that's it from me.